friends, unlike a lot of the people I know who were not privileged to grow up in church, I literally grew up in church, and not just as a church attendant, but as the son of a pastor. And in my own ministry, which is a little different from church directly, I see a replication of some of the things that bedeviled my father. I can relate. I can remember some of the challenges I have, and I recall him having had the same challenges. And that is why some things don't really surprise me, because I saw him go through those things. But the difference is that he had more grace to overcome those things than I do, because he was very quite pious, and he was not somebody who would want to argue with anyone. When there was an argument, he would let you win. In fact, I could, at some point, it was funny because he was arguing with a certain man, and he won the argument. And then that man supported him, supported his position, and then he dropped his position and went to that man's position. But the man said, "No, but you are right. I thought you are right, and that's why I was supporting you." And he said, "No, I wasn't even right. You are right." So then it becomes a bit funny. But he would not want to argue, and he didn't want to have any enemies. Unfortunately, he still had enemies, people who just didn't like him. One of the men who didn't like him, and I heard him speak that with his own mouth, because he was sick for a very long time. And finally, people expected him to die, and some people wanted him to die for some reason. And so he is on this deathbed, and this guy called Moses, says, "I thought this man has finally gone. What is he waiting for?" And he didn't know I was hearing that. And I just told him, "No, you don't worry, he will actually go." And then he said, "No, I wasn't talking about your father. Please don't mistake me. I wasn't." And I said, "No, I never said you're talking about my father. I'm just referring to the person you're talking about and their departure, and reminding you that life is in the hands of the Lord. It's God who decides when we leave, and no human being will ever do that. And you also don't know your day of departure." So I was just referring to that man, and he was really embarrassed. And from that time, it has always come up. Whenever I see him, I see I see those words written on his forehead, because he was so embarrassed. And I didn't even get into further detail. So I grew up with this man who never wanted to have enemies, and who did everything right to gain approval from everybody. Of course, he had a church in his own village, among his own people. So it was so difficult for him to operate, because of the past, people getting familiarity, and hinging upon the familiarity they had about him from childhood. Growing up in a place, and then you finally become a shepherd, a pastor in that same community, and you begin pastoring people who have seen you grow up. It is really difficult. Even Jesus had a challenge there, and he says a prophet will never be respected in his own home, among his very people. And so he had that challenge, and what made him survive was this attitude of not wanting to have any enemy, and being so sanctimonious, being so correct, and trying to follow scripture in every precept, every teaching, and every dot. he followed that, and he was very successful at that, I can say. And so I really know he's in heaven. And having grown up with such a person, I have been trying to unlearn some of the things about church. And that is basically why I'm outside the church walls. That is why you cannot contain me within the four walls. And on a Sunday morning, looking at the pulpit and getting, somebody talking to me in the name of having heard from the Lord and delivering an inspiration that should carry me through the week. You can't find me like listening and the worship service where I dedicate some 2 hours to just listen to good nice music so that I can feel nice. And in the process of me feeling nice, then I'm that is I'm feeling spiritual, and that is now my time of worship. I don't believe that. I believe that my worship to my God should come out of my heart, and it is a continuous thing. It's not limited. It should continually be a culture, so that every single time I'm in tune with God and worshiping Him through my life, through extending that love in action with the people that need some love. That worship is not does not come to the ears, so that now it reflects how I feel about God. Other than that, it has to come from my heart as an expression of love to God through the people that I can see and relate to, who are really the children of God and His beloved. And so I've unlearned a lot of things, and going forward and through life, I continue unlearning a lot of the things I learned as a child about evangelism and about the meaning of the gospel and about patriotism, because following the colonial gospel that was given to Africa, people were told that you have to really be respectful to government, and all men in authority are appointed by God, blah, blah, blah. So if you go against the leadership, then you are only going against God. And those words are spoken out of context, because we know they are coming out of the book of Romans, chapter 13. But, what is the context of that? What is happening in Rome? And because that is written to the Romans, to the church in Rome. And so why is Paul writing that? And so we grow up and bad people are in leadership positions, and they are being corrupt. They are killing people, and they are stealing and destroying organizations, just doing bad things. And then they quote Romans 13, which is pretty much annoying. So, I'm not a patriotic person. I don't believe in especially the government of the day. Talking about my country, Kenya, and the kind of corruption that I see going on, the kind of indifference. People just suffering. Electricity is so expensive. Like, you get only about 25 tokens. I don't know what that is. But with the $10, you get only that. And it's really very expensive. They have made life hell on earth. And so I'll be talking more about government and trying to explain why I ran for political office in 2017. It wasn't just to run because I wanted to gain power, but it was a form of protest against the powers that be, and I had reasons for that, and I still have reasons for that. My heart is justified in the act of running for office, I'm not saying I'll run again, but it was good that I ran to just learn a few things, and I really grew out of that. And so I'm unlearning a lot of things about church and about life. And I've really been thinking about the ministry that my father had, and slight comparisons with what I have. And he ran a ministry within four walls, and my ministry is away. It's not enshrined in four walls. And he basically ministered to people spiritually and sometimes physically. But mine really does a lot of physical ministration to the people, and then what follows thereafter is spiritual nourishment, because what we do, and you will never see that in on videos, is that after people have been helped out of jiggers and out of the quagmire, out of the stagnation they found themselves in, there is a very, very intense follow-up program that helps them spiritually. And we socialize them, we help them to, to come back to community and to know God, and to understand that they are beloved, that God loves them, and whatever human beings tried to speak about them was not true. And so I'm busy kidogo, yeah, and so it's really and so it's really a different approach, but I believe we are both right. Nobody's wrong, because it's about souls and serving souls. He studied in the spiritual aspect, and I begin from the physical aspect. But I think we are all on course, and I really don't know, but I hope I will get home and be with him, because if there is anybody that I know to have been a Christian, a true follower of Jesus Christ, it was my father. He really, you talk about loving your enemy and struggling with that. He had no enemies. He just couldn't allow you to be his enemy, because he could agree with you even if you are wrong, and in the process try to bring you back to the light of truth. And it would take a lot of time for him to do that, and sometimes it didn't work. And he came across as a weakling, and people took his personality for weakness, and people got away with a lot. They just got away with everything. You would really get away with anything. He would let you win. And I think I'm different in that you will not just get away with it. I will try to challenge that. I will say, no, that is not right. And when I see things, when he saw things, he really asked God for direction, for intervention, as he stood there and waited for something to happen. And really through his life, we saw a lot of miracles happening in our own family, and I'll be sharing some of that. But I'm the type that will see things, will see a problem and want to solve it. I will go for it and try to solve it. And it makes me get a lot of bumps and bruises through trying to do things, change things and all that. And sometimes it works against me. But then things happen, because God looks at me and he knows I'm just being stupid, I'm human. And then God really, he helps me. He helps me somehow to get a few things done. And so that was just a little intro to my comparison with my father, having been a pastor and me being in the movement of love in action, and this complementing each other. And we're just similar, in so many ways, just different approaches, but similar thinking, similar philosophies. And so I will share some more later on about my life. Remember, these are my little musings. Please subscribe and continue following me as we walk through my journey and discover a few things that have shaped my being and my workings, and indeed my life. Thank you, friends, for watching my video.